Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Country Strategy and Program Evaluation Virtual National Workshop on this beautiful Friday, 18th of March 2022. It is an honor for me, Rani Raj, to be your moderator for today. And I would also like to welcome here with us the Honorable Resident Coordinator of the United Nations, Distinguished Director General and Directors from Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Villages, Development and Disadvantaged Region and Transmigration, Ministry of Environment and Forestry of the Republic of Indonesia, and also Distinguished Director of Center for Climate Change Finance and Multilateral Policy, Ministry of Finance, Distinguished Directors from Bappenas and the Ministry of Agriculture, the Asian Development Bank Country Director, Efat Associate Vice President, Efat Director of the Independent Office of Evaluation, Efat Director of the Asia and the Pacific Division, Efat Country Director, government officials, Efat staffs, and also partners. Ladies and gentlemen, this event aims to discuss the main findings and recommendations emerging from the evaluation and to reflect on opportunities and challenges in the Efat and government partnerships. It is also an opportunity to reflect on strategic priorities for Efat's next country strategy. And at Efat, we very much look forward to this event as they provide an excellent forum to have a candid and constructive exchange and dialogue to further enhance Efat-funded operations on the ground. Outcomes of this event are useful to finalizing the action plan that follows the CSPE recommendation. This virtual national workshop is organized by the Government of Indonesia and IOE in close collaboration with Efat's Asia and the Pacific Division. Before we start, please be informed that this meeting will be recorded and the Zoom etiquette rules are reported in this meeting chat for you, of course, for your kind information. Participants are also informed that the interpretation service is available in English and Bahasa, clicking on the interpretation icon in the Zoom toolbar. And we also have an exciting and packed schedule in front of us, so allow me to read the agenda for today. First, we will kick off the event with welcome remarks from Ms. Dian Lestari, Director of Center for Climate Change Finance and Multilateral Policy, Ministry of Finance. This will be followed by the opening statement from Ms. Raden Siliwanti, Director of Multilateral Funding Cooperation, Ministry of National Development Planning, or Bappenas. And after that, there will be an introductory statement by Mr. Indra Naidu, Director of the Independent Office of Evaluation of Efat. After that, we will hear the statement from Mr. Donald Brown, Associate Vice President, Efat's Program Management Department. Janet Cook, IOE Evaluation Analyst, and DJAP, International Consultant, will then present the main findings, conclusion, and also recommendation of the CSPE. This will be followed by a plenary discussion. The discussion will be structured around 3 topics, and we are lucky today we have 3 distinguished speakers who will introduce each topic. You can see the details in the chat box. And after the plenary session, we will hear reflections by Mr. Ivan Kosio, Efat Country Director for Indonesia, on the future directions for the Indonesia Country Strategy and Program. In the next session, Mr. Nigel Brett, Regional Director at Interim for the Asia and Pacific Division, Efat's Program Management Department, will deliver his statement. And lastly, Mr. Indra Naidu and Ms. Raden Siliwanti will deliver their closing remarks. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let us start the function. It is high time for us to listen to the welcome remarks from Ms. Dian Lestari, Director of Center for Climate Change Finance and Multilateral Policy, Ministry of Finance of the Republic of Indonesia. Ms. Dian, the screen is yours.
Terima kasih, Mbak Rani. Ibu Siliwanti, distinguished.
Thank you, Ms. Rani and Ms. Siliwanti.
Very good afternoon to all of you. Allow me to deliver these remarks on behalf of Pak Wempi Saputra, Assistant of Minister for Macroeconomy and International Finance, who's unfortunately unavailable today. I would like to start by thanking all of you for your participation and welcome you all to this important occasion of Efat Country Strategy and Program Evaluation, or CSPE National Workshop. It has been more than 40 years of partnership between Indonesia and IFAD. I'm delighted to note many significant contributions that IFAD have made in Indonesia. One of them is that IFAD has demonstrated a good model of international collaboration through its integrated approach. IFAD's mainstreaming agenda has provided us a better perspective on how to increase the resilience and sustainability of rural development. As you know that 3 out of 5 Indonesians live in rural areas with farming as their main livelihood. We acknowledge IFAD's approach to pursue investment in rural people as a key to rural economic recovery in the post-COVID-19 pandemic. By rural people, meaning smallholder farmers and fisheries producers, women, ethnic minorities, and youth. Today marks the 3rd IFAD country strategy and program evaluation in Indonesia. The 2 previous evaluations were completed in 2004 and 2014. At this CSPE session, we are facing a challenging situation since COVID-19 pandemic and its impact are still looming. Even so, evaluation can still run despite all the obstacles brought about by the current pandemic. Today, we are all gathering as a final step of the evaluation process. We will discuss the main findings, recommendations, and issues emerging from the CSPE. We hope that this will reflect not only challenges, but also opportunities in the IFAD government partnership and strategic priorities, especially for its next country strategic program. Through discussion like this, we hope that our continuing partnership in agricultural and rural development can be improved and strengthened further to support our economic recovery efforts and the achievement of our sustainable development goals. Finally, I believe that we shall engage in a fruitful and important discussion today that would help in delivering the main objectives of this CSPE to assess the result and performance of the IFAD finance strategy and program, as well as generate findings and recommendations for the improvement of future partnership between IFAD and the Government of Indonesia. I believe this is crucial to effectively support our effort toward inclusive and sustainable rural transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dian Lestari. It was a delightful welcoming speech. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving to the next agenda item. We will be hearing the opening statement from Ms. Siliwanti, Director of Multilateral Funding Cooperation, Ministry of National Development Planning, or Bappenas. Ms. Siliwanti, the stage is yours.
Sorry, Ibu Siliwanti.
Hello, Ms. Siliwanti. Maybe you can unmute the microphone.
How about now?
Yeah, it's very clear. You may start.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, good afternoon, and Bapak Ibu semuanya, Excellency. Ibu Valerie Julian, UN Resident Coordinator. Ibu Dian Lestari, Director for Center for Climate Change, Finance and Multilateral Policy. Mr. Indra Naidu, Director of the Independent Office of Evaluation of IFAD. Mr. Donald Brown, Associate Vice President, Program Management Department, IFAD. And my colleagues from Bappenas, Land Ministries, representatives, and development partners. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Snyder Siahaan, Deputy for Development Funding, Ministry of National Development Planning for Bappenas, who has unable to attend today's meeting because he is still recovering from after being confirmed positive with COVID-19. We thank you all of you for your presence this afternoon at the National Workshop on IFAD Country Strategy Program Evaluation, which is part of the collaboration between the Government of Indonesia and IFAD's Independent Office of Evaluation in evaluating the result and performance of IFAD Country Strategic Opportunity Program COSOP during 2013-2021. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, loans and grants have contributed in the development of Indonesia, and it was positioned as a complementary resource that can be used with no political ties and without sacrificing national interests. As complementary fund resources, loan and grants are utilized to enhance and accelerate the achievement of national development objectives. Since its operation in Indonesia, IFAD has been contributing to support the government's development funding, especially support related to the inclusive rural transformation to enable rural people to reduce poverty and achieve sustainable livelihood. From 2013 to 2021, there are at least 30 IFAD activities operating in Indonesia with a commitment values of around 490 million US dollar, with a composition of 439 million US dollars for loan projects and 52 million US dollar for grant projects. In this regard, on behalf of the Government of Indonesia, let me take this opportunity to express our appreciation to the IFAD for being supportive as a development partner for the Indonesian government. Ladies and gentlemen, Bapak dan Ibu semua, to improve our cooperation, future cooperation, and also in line with the IFAD evaluation policy as approved by 131st session of the IFAD Executive Board in 2020, the Independent Office of Evaluation has undertaken the country strategies and program evaluation in Indonesia. 17 activities in the 2013-2020 period are included in the list evaluated in this country strategy and program evaluation. These activities consist of 9 loan projects, 3 country-specific grants, and 3 global regional grants and 2 GEF grant-funded projects. Since October 2021, the Independent Office of Evaluation IFAD has conducted interviews with all stakeholders involved from the government, development partners, civil society, private sectors, and implementing partners. A draft report was prepared and distributed by the Independent Office of Evaluation to the Government of Indonesia in January 2022. Proposal and inputs from the Government of Indonesia were submitted and discussed both in writing and verbally at the meeting on January 21st, 2022. The report was then finalized in February 2022, taking into account comments from the IFAD and the government. Today's meeting is very important so that we can get an idea of how cooperation will be carried out in the future. The meetings aims to discuss the main findings, recommendation, and issue raising from the country strategy and program evaluation. The second is to reflect on the opportunities and challenges in the IFAD government partnership and strategic priorities for the next IFAD Indonesia COSOP, and to finalize the document, country strategy program, the report. After the national workshop, the agreement at completion point will be signed prior to the presentation of the country strategy and program evaluation at the 117th session of the evaluation committee in June 2022. The agreement at completion point contains a summary of the main findings and recommendation of CSPE, which will be agreed upon the Government of Indonesia and IFAD at today's meeting. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today's meeting is very relevant to our efforts to improve development cooperation with IFAD. We really hope that today's meeting could formulate recommendation for future cooperation that can overcome the problems of implementing country strategies and programs that occur in several implementing agencies and line ministries. With the appropriate strategy and close monitoring, we expect the implementation performance can be improved. Finally, country strategy and program evaluation will only be useful because of your contributions and active participation. This is the right platform to together discuss, share, highlight, lesson, challenges, opportunity, and best practices for our future development cooperation. To all, I wish you a fruitful and constructive meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Siliwanti, for the opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now hear the introductory statement that will be delivered by the Director of the Independent Office of Evaluation of IFAD. Here, Mr. Indra Naidu will share with us his expectation of this event and set the stage for what will follow. Mr. Indra Naidu, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, moderator. Honorable Valerie Julian, United Nations Resident Coordinator, distinguished representatives of the Government of Indonesia, representatives of IFAD, partner institutions and international organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to be part of this virtual national workshop organized by the Independent Office of Evaluation of IFAD in collaboration with the Government of Indonesia and the Asia and the Pacific Division of IFAD. This workshop follows the finalization of the independent country strategy and program evaluation in Indonesia and provides an opportunity to share and discuss the main findings and recommendations with the government, IFAD, and other stakeholders and partners. I would like to start by expressing my appreciation to the Government of Indonesia and Bappenas, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Finance, and executing agencies for the collaboration on this evaluation. Our appreciation goes to the project teams, partner organizations, and international consultants for sharing insights, supporting field visits, and patience in responding to numerous requests for data and information from the evaluation team. I would also like to recognize the support of IFAD Program Management Department, in particular, Mr. Donald Brown, Associate Vice President, Mr. Nigel Brett, Regional Director of IFAD's Asia and Pacific Division, Mr. Ivan Kosio, IFAD Country Director for Indonesia, and his program officers, Anissa Lucky and Nicholas Syed. Finally, I would like to thank the evaluation team, initially led by Ms. Chitra Deshpande, former Senior Evaluation Officer, and recently led by Jeanette Cook, Evaluation Analyst, who were all ably supported by a team of national and international consultants. Ms. Margareta Iovono, Evaluation Assistant, provided efficient administrative support to the team and to organization of today's event. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the third independent country strategy and program evaluation in Indonesia. The objectives of this impartial and evidence-based evaluation were to assess the results and performance of the IFAD finance strategy and program since 2013, and provide findings, lessons, and recommendations to inform the next IFAD country strategy and the future partnership between IFAD and government. Poverty rates have steadily declined in Indonesia over the past 2 decades, but more than 25 million people remain poor, with more than half residing in rural areas. There are also considerable disparities between regions. The agricultural sector remains crucial as a major employer, and it is vital to eliminate poverty and improve food security and nutrition. However, smallholder producers face several challenges, including lack of access to quality seeds, improved technology, finance, and value chains. Climate change impacts compound the situation, as does the country's vulnerability to natural hazards. Against this background, the partnership between IFAD and the government remains highly pertinent to reduce poverty and enable inclusive and sustainable rural transformation. Since 1980, IFAD has financed 20 projects in Indonesia with US $670 million, out of a total project cost of $2.7 billion. Moving forward, it is my sincere hope that this evaluation will contribute to improving the effectiveness of the strategic partnership between the Government of Indonesia and IFAD. I would now like to highlight a few key findings from the evaluation, while Ms. Jeanette Cook and the international consultant, Mr. Dijo, will deliver a more comprehensive presentation later. IFAD and the government have forged a closer, respected, and trusted relationship. IFAD recognizes that systemic change takes time and has provided dependable support, even when it has resulted in a trade-off in implementation efficiency. Crucially, the farmers themselves report that they have benefited from farmer field schools and working with village facilitators. They report increased knowledge and capacity and the adoption of innovative techniques leading to higher yields. On the other hand, the evaluation pointed to some areas that deserve attention. Firstly, the CSPE found that the country program has become less focused and coherent with more scattered geographic targeting. This has resulted in a shift away from the poorest area and reduced opportunity for in-depth understanding of local contexts. While individual projects may be relevant, both internal and external coherence are lacking across the country program that weakens the potential for achieving impact. Secondly, IFAD has yet to fully realize the role expected by the Government of Indonesia as a middle-income country. For example, bringing global technical know-how and experience, generating learning and influencing policy, opportunities to trial alternative models of rural and agricultural development, and increasing its visibility internationally. Related to this, not enough time and resources have been given to develop useful monitoring and evaluation systems and knowledge management strategies. This has limited demonstrating the achievement of projects, including innovations, scaling up, and the sharing of lessons with partners in and outside the country. Now, looking forward, we can gain a better understanding of future opportunities and ways to overcome constraints to promote inclusive and sustainable transformation of rural areas and livelihoods. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Naidu, for this introductory statement. Now, may I ask Mr. Donald Brown, IFAD's Associate Vice President for the Program Management Department, to deliver his statement. Mr. Brown, you may take over the screen.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone in Indonesia, and good morning to others in Rome and elsewhere. I'd like to, first of all, recognize the Director for the Ministry of National Development Planning and also the Director for Multilateral Funding Cooperation and the UN Resident Coordinator for their presence here today, and all other participants. It is my great pleasure to attend this country strategy and program evaluation workshop organized by the Government of Indonesia and the Independent Office for Evaluation of IFAD. I always look forward to reading the country strategy program evaluations as they hold rich and constructive insights on our performance and help us improve our focus going forward. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Director of IOE and his team for their excellent work. IFAD and the Government of Indonesia have had a strong and strategic partnership over the past 4 decades. And I want to sincerely thank the Government of Indonesia for that. Since 1980, IFAD has supported 20 projects in Indonesia with a total financing of $2.765 billion. And today, IFAD's country program is one of the largest portfolios in the region and globally for IFAD. And while recognizing the strong economic growth that Indonesia has had in recent years and resulting reduction in poverty rates, there are still many challenges faced by rural people in the country, such as increasing pressure on natural resources, growing inequality, and all of these are exacerbated by the economic damage caused by COVID-19. The socioeconomic consequences of the pandemic has directed us to refocus on rural and agricultural development strategies globally, And as such, this country strategy program evaluation comes at a very good time as we're preparing the new country strategy with the Government of Indonesia for IFAD's operations, as well as 2 new investment projects scheduled for 2023. The lessons and recommendations will certainly be very useful in shaping these. Management's glad to note that the IFAD's country strategies and portfolio align well with the government's priorities and beneficiary needs. And in particular, we were pleased to see we've been successful in disseminating enhanced technologies such as the Jawo planting system, which has ultimately translated into increased yields and productivity. And of particular importance to us is the joint efforts of IFAD and government on environmental and natural resource management, and specifically on the peatlands management, which was received global recognition at the COP26 in Glasgow as best practice. Coming to the findings, a few things struck me in particular. Firstly, was the importance of having a COSOP with a long-term vision, which can provide IFAD strategic direction in a cohesive program approach to meet the government's evolving needs as a middle-income country. This is not a unique issue to address in Indonesia. It is also an important area that management is considering carefully for all middle-income countries. Secondly, the persisting issues of weak project management. This again is not just an issue around Indonesia. In fact, we had a long discussion yesterday at IFAD's evaluation committee about this particular issue about weak project management, which has plagued a number of IFAD projects within Indonesia, but as I say, elsewhere. And we've had some persistent delays in project startup periods and implementation. And in this regard, I would really like to highlight that management has been and will continue to explore opportunities, not only to strengthen the capacity of project staff, but working with the government to address this systemic issue. We should also recognize that capacity building is only part of the solution. And as an implementer of IFAD co-finance projects, we request government to find ways of recruiting and retaining skilled staff for the duration of the project. This is probably one of the most fundamental building blocks for a successful project. The third thing that struck me were the issues around monitoring and evaluation and the low rating for gender equality and women's empowerment. On monitoring and evaluation, establishing an effective M&E system is important in any project. And I believe for the government to know what we have achieved, what we need to improve, and for IFAD as well, because we're both accountable to our stakeholders. So we must work with the Government of Indonesia to build M&E capacity in project management units. This also means developing some strong knowledge management mechanisms backed up by accurate data. On gender equality and women's empowerment, while the CSPE does recognise the project targets on women's participation were met for the closed projects or are on track for the ongoing projects, we must improve the awareness of gender empowerment at all levels, building on context-specific analysis and pathways which we should include in the new COSOP. So in conclusion, I'm glad to note that we've had some significant development impacts in Indonesia working with the government and that we have a strong relationship with government and other partners. But I also do take note of areas where we could do better and we must do better. And management is committed to ensuring that the recommendations from this CSP are implemented through incorporation in the upcoming COSOP in partnership with government. And I will listen carefully to any other points raised during discussion. So thank you again to IOE for the report, and thank you again to the Government of Indonesia for the strong spirit of collaboration. And I look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown, for your statement. Ladies and gentlemen, we are entering the CSPE presentation session. We will be hearing the key findings, conclusion, and also recommendation in this session. This session will be presented by Jeanette Cook, Evaluation Analyst of the Independent Office of Evaluation, and DJAP, International Consultant. Jeanette, the floor is yours.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Rani, and good morning and good day to everyone. And to those of you in Indonesia, selamat sore. It's my pleasure today to present the main findings, conclusions, and recommendations of this country strategy and program evaluation in the Republic of Indonesia. So I will explain a little bit about the evaluation, and then I will pass over to the international consultant, Dijab, who will explain the main findings and conclusions. And then I will bring the presentation to a close, explaining the main recommendations. So the evaluation was conducted by IFAD's Independent Office of Evaluation, or IOE. And I would like to take a moment just to acknowledge the team of staff and consultants that worked very hard to bring it all together. So first, I'd like to acknowledge the former lead evaluator, Chitra Deshpande, then the international consultants, Dijab, Teda Bear, Valentine Gandhi, Rati Dewi, and Elena Setyadharma. And I'd also particularly like to acknowledge all the national consultants that supported us, particularly during the field visits. Pak Rino Sadanoa, Ibu Deborah Tobing, Pak Iqbal Abisabutra, Ibu Yeni Indra, and Pak Riz Adima. I'd also like to acknowledge the cooperation and support from the IFAD country office throughout the evaluation, as well as from the Government of Indonesia towards the evaluation. So this is the third country strategy and program evaluation in Indonesia conducted by IOE. The main objectives were to, 1, assess the results and performance of the IFAD finance strategy and program, and to generate findings and recommendations for the future partnership between IFAD and the government for enhanced development effectiveness and rural transformation. So the evaluation covered the period from 2013 until the end of 2021. And it therefore included the assessment of 2 of the country strategies during that period, the 2014 interim country strategy and the 2016 COSOP. It covered the IFAD lending program, which comprised of 9 programs, 4 of which were closed, 5 are still ongoing, and they're listed here on the slide. The total estimated cost of these investment projects amounts to $2.2 billion, of which IFAD financed 21%. The evaluation also covered the non-lending program, which, avoiding the jargon, includes knowledge management, partnership building, and policy engagement. And also it included an assessment of IFAD grants, and in particular 2 grants funded by the Global Environment Facility, or GEF, that was supervised by IFAD. Next slide. This next slide is an overview of the methodology used by the evaluation, which clearly had to be adjusted to the COVID-19 pandemic and to the restrictions at the time within Indonesia on movements. So here we highlight, if you like, the main methods and sources used to triangulate our findings. So the evaluation undertook an extensive desk review of all IFAD country and project documents. And we also looked at secondary sources to ensure we had a good understanding of the country context over the evaluation period. And obviously that was supported by the in-depth knowledge of our national and international consultants. Our team of national consultants importantly undertook field visits over 3 weeks, visiting 9 provinces from the east to the west of the country. And they visited 11 districts and held discussions with project staff and partnering organizations. They also visited 25 villages to meet with as many beneficiaries as possible, as well as village government and local service providers. And in a bid to reach as many beneficiaries as possible, 2 consultants that were based in Jakarta also conducted telephone interviews with beneficiaries. So then the international and national evaluation teams interviewed a wide range of stakeholders in IFAD, the government, partnering organizations, and also talking to some of the key international consultants that support the IFAD country program. Lastly, an online survey was conducted in English and in Bahasa, involving both IFAD and government personnel. So before we move on to the main evaluation findings, we wanted to give you, if you like, a geographic orientation of the country program. So first we have a map of the closed projects, the 4 closed projects, plus the GEF grants. And as you can see, with the exception of, I hope you can see, with the exception of the GEF grant funded projects, which are marked by the cross check in green, we can see that the projects are mainly in the east as well as in the center of the country. And now if we go to the map of ongoing projects, we can see that the projects are now well spread out throughout the entire country from east to west, covering 3 time zones. So with this introduction to the evaluation and this geographic orientation of the country program, I'll now pass over to Dijup to present the main findings and conclusions.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. I hope everybody can hear me. I've taken the precaution of putting my headphones on just in case we don't have any difficulties. So it is my pleasure to present the main findings from this extensive study. I think I was involved with it over a period of a year, almost to the day. As I think Mr. Donald Brown already mentioned, it is quite it's a deep a deep dive into the country program, and this short presentation will necessarily just summarize. So next slide, please. So we've split this presentation into 2 parts, really. One which is looking particularly at areas of strength, and the second part is looking at more challenging areas or areas that still need improvement. And we're adopting very much a forward-looking lens, so that we hope that this will be useful in developing the new country program and strategy. So there are 3 slides in each, both strengths and areas for improvement. Let's start with the first one, which has already been mentioned by Indra, was that the IFAD country strategy and the project portfolio has been we found was very relevant to the needs of, most importantly, smallholder farmers and fishers, but also, of course, very importantly to the Government of Indonesia. And it does fit very much with the policies and expectations moving forward. IFAD has embraced challenges over the years, and of course we were covering quite a long time, but looked also historically back because that was important in our evaluation. So, for example, their support for their long-term support for decentralization, which traces back to the early days of PNPM, moving on to Village Development Program, and now TECAD, is something that has taken a lot of tenacity and not always easy to do, but it has embraced that challenge. More recently, taking the government's lead of targeting youth, that very important priority in Indonesia, and something that is new. Supporting joined up government, that's the collaboration between government departments and directorates, and also taking on some politically sensitive issues such as peatland conservation. Another strength has been that the building up of successive projects and approaches, and building on lessons from the past. So you can see in the evaluation we could see a very good sense of building from experience, and that was very valuable. And there are a number of examples of that. There's also been some success in policy engagement, particularly, I think, in helping to stimulate some of the ideas in the 2014 Village Law, to support participatory practice in general, and influencing to some extent the government's 5-year plans, and also influencing policy on sustainable peatlands management. There's been valuable partnerships built with co-financiers, in particular Asian Development Bank and Islamic Development Bank, the Rome-based agencies, although this is the detailed collaboration is still in infancy and has been delayed, of course, by COVID. It's nevertheless working well together with FAO and the World Food Programme. also establishing some relationships with the private sector, notably Mars and research bodies. Next. Continuing areas of strength, one of the, I suppose, innovations at the time was the development of village facilitators. And this has been adopted very much in the Ministry of Villages model, and before that, the Ministry of Home Affairs model of supporting village governance, but more than that, providing a bridge between villages and service providers. Another important strength has been the farmer field schools, an opportunity for farmers to interact, participate, share. And this was very much appreciated when we talked with farmer beneficiaries, this opportunity to share their own experiences rather than to be told what to do in a more formal training environment. And they have indeed indicated to us in many occasions that when we were talking with them, that they have adopted some innovative techniques and have, as a result, improved yields. There have been some notable improvements to village governance through IFAD support, particularly participatory practice, the organisation of village deliberations every year in December, January. The Musrenbang is something that was very much supported in the past and continues to be, and providing this enabling environment for rural transformation. There are a number of innovations, one of which has already been mentioned. Some others that just quickly, there are too many to mention, is farmers monitoring fire risk in peatland areas. For example, farmers conducting their own household monitoring, and farmer contribution to the cost of equipment, which has resulted in equipment meeting their priority demands, and also a greater willingness to maintain equipment. We also acknowledge that there was timely project completion and satisfactory loan absorption rate of those closed finished projects. Next. There has some evidence of sustainability of benefits, partly because of the sequential nature of projects. So READC, for example, building on the experience of READ, TechAd building on the experiences of PayM and VDP, and the use of farmer groups formed in earlier projects and then supporting them into the future. And some of the efforts to revigorate water user groups and establish coastal management groups, which we have seen to some extent continue. There's been some notable instances of scaling up. The community-driven development approaches, as we've said, appear well in the village law, in the formulation of the village law and the way village funds are administered, and the integrated approach to marine conservation. Again, strengthen policies and regulations in sustainable peatland management, and particularly recently, the even closer and trusted IFAD government relationships, strengthened in particular by the establishment of the country office in Jakarta, and the valued supervision and support missions that are conducted. So now we move into the areas for improvement, and this has already been alluded to this afternoon. As a middle-income country, the Government of Indonesia had expressed very clearly to the evaluation team the value they give to technical expertise and policy advice, and their desire for IFAD to help them and support them to play a bigger role globally themselves. We noticed that project designs, and this is not exclusive to Indonesia, but seems to be quite a wider phenomenon, have become more and more ambitious. I'd even say complicated rather than complex. And as we've noted already, increasingly diffuse across the country. And this risks dilution of some of the government's key priorities, and also diminishes focus on poverty targeting, in particular the SDG call to leave no one behind. When IFAD worked more geographically and in the East, they were able to not only build sequentially from project to project, but also benefit from horizontal integration and support from other projects. And they built a very good knowledge of the context in Eastern Indonesia. Whilst we understand the desire to step more into commercialization of agriculture and value chains and the business development settings, there is, and very good intentions there is still a limited awareness and actual collaboration with other agricultural development partners. It is a very vibrant sector. And we noticed that, very little in our interviews was raised about some of the things that were already going on there. Also mentioned by one of the introductory speeches was the lack of a coherent long-term vision, and one that is very appropriate for a middle-income country. And a need to reconnect, if you like, with some of the overarching objectives of poverty reduction, and especially food, and in Indonesia's case, less about food insecurity, but more about nutrition. And we have a double-edged sword in Indonesia of malnutrition, which is both too much and too little. Next. Noted already the slow procurement and contracting processes, and the very the limit that is that is faced, or the constraints faced by having part-time staff who are often overworked on projects and expected to continue with their day job, and personnel turnover, which inevitably slows implementation. Initially in projects, there has been slow disbursement rates. And of course, we acknowledge that COVID-19 has had an effect on this. But and we do see, positives in terms of trying to improve these. I think one of our biggest concerns in the evaluation was a lack of credible evidence of rural impact. The monitoring system, it primarily serves a management information systems function. It tracks inputs and disbursements, and to some extent outreach to numbers of people attending or participating in the projects, but very little about how things change. And the importance that, and so disappointing, because when you talk to farmers in the field, they're clear about what has changed for them, but this is just not picked up, so we don't have the concrete evidence. Effectiveness is limited in improving farmer access to markets. This participation of these very small farmers in markets has not achieved anything like the expectations that are outlined in project designs. Next. As again already mentioned, is limited promotion of gender equality and women's empowerment. Whilst this has been somewhat limited to quotas, the famous 30% that appears everywhere, and has been left at that without really addressing some of the context specific. And we know, Indonesia is so different from east to west in terms of culture, and in terms of, particularly in terms of family dynamics. So this is really important and under focused on. We also note that there are some increasing issues around marginalization of men, and particularly young men, who are often very likely to be unemployed in rural areas, again exacerbated by the COVID situation. But particularly here is the issue of women's workload, and that the projects sometimes even make this worse by expecting them to do specific and additional tasks. The resources for IFAD are insufficient given the size and geographic spread of the portfolio. And this is one of the many reasons why the monitoring and evaluation and the knowledge management and the opportunity to engage with partners and policy has been so limited. This is even with this wonderful team in country, now actually with its own office in country, this is still inadequate. And the quality of program management, procurement at M&E is still limited and is increasingly stretched by complexity and the scale of projects. Projects which cover 90+ districts is very, very challenging. And next. So our conclusions are I'll just go through these before I pass back to Jeanette for the recommendations. So very importantly, we've put it up the top, farming and farming households are getting benefits. We just can't, we haven't got the hard data to prove this. The consistent support over decades has earned IFAD a respected position with the Government of Indonesia. Its support to systemic change, for example, the decentralization agenda of the government, whilst tenacious and valuable, also came with trade-offs that were mentioned earlier. And recently, the country program has become less focused and less coherent with this wider geographic spread. And finally, the IFAD's corporate one-size-fits-all approach across middle income, lower income countries right through to middle income countries and everything in between doesn't particularly fit for the Government of Indonesia's needs and requests, and needs to be thought through. And I was delighted to hear that this is something that's already being discussed yesterday. So that's from my side. Thank you very much. And I'll pass back to Jeanette.
Thank you, Dee. So based on these findings just presented, the evaluation identified 5 recommendations for the future country strategy and program. So I'll just go through these now. Number 1, base the new country strategy on a long-term strategic vision that drives cohesive programming that meets the government's evolving needs as a middle-income country. And here the evaluation recommends a narrower and sharper focus in terms of geographic and thematic coverage. It also recommends greater external coherence, so the country program adds value and complements the work of others. 2, develop project designs suited to the capacity of implementing agencies, the needs of targeted districts, and project duration. Designs need to be less complex and include components on strengthening the capacity of implementing agencies and partners. And sufficient time and resources are needed to set up the management and financial systems at startup, and that needs to be factored into the design. 3, strengthen project management units to support a more integrated and programmatic approach. And here consideration could also be given to alternative program management arrangements. 4th recommendation, prioritize knowledge management through a country program-wide strategy, which engages partners, promotes policy dialogue, and stimulates regionally and internationally recognized technical capacity. So this should include the integration of knowledge generation and management into program implementation. And knowledge sharing could also be more facilitated among development partners and the government. And lastly, recommendation 5, develop a practical monitoring and evaluation system that promotes innovation and enables effective management. And priority here really needs to be given to developing simple, relevant and focused monitoring and evaluation tools. So that's the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention and terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Janet and Dee. Thanks a lot for this insightful presentation. You have highlighted so many successes, which no doubt will be the foundation for future IFAD-funded activities. And at the same time, you also identified a number of challenges that need to be addressed so that together with the government, our partners and beneficiaries, we can bring about the necessary rural transformation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, after listening to the CSPE presentation, we are now moving into the plenary discussion. Here we are going to discuss several topics related to the main findings of the evaluations. We will first cover all the topics one by one, and then after that we will open the discussion, and I will give you the participants the chance to give any comments or contribution. I also advise you to use the chat box to insert your comments or contribution. All right, to kick us off, we have distinguished speakers here. First topic is about IFAD role under the UN mandate, collaborative work, and knowledge sharing for SDGs. May I invite Ms. Plenary Discussion?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Ibu Dian Lestarit from the Ministry of Finance, Ibu Sili from Bapenas, all my fellow UN colleagues, Indra, Naidu, Donald Brown, Nigel Brett, of course, Ivan, all of you here, the representative from different line ministries, development partners, guests. I'm very pleased to be with you today. And I would say first, on behalf of the entire UN family in Indonesia, I would like to congratulate IFAD on completing its country strategy and program evaluation jointly with the government. I mean, what is central to the achievement of the SDG, it's really the elimination of poverty at the same time as boosting the development, overall development, but without leaving no one behind. And I think it is really what is central to the SDGs, and the evaluation that we just heard about, I mean, indicates where there are points that need to be worked on in order to not leave anyone behind. But very often, you know, we talk about the eliminating poverty, but we can only boost the rural development and address the most vulnerable region, people, and community if we also address the looming climate crisis. We fight hunger, we fight poverty. Everything is interconnected because there can never be zero hunger if we still have poverty. And there can never be equality if women and children, poor smallholder farmers face discrimination. And there is no agriculture, there is no farming if we don't have land. So I think that everything we've heard and we know is that we cannot afford to lose more time because the climate crisis alarm is ringing louder and louder. And it means that to address all those issues, we need to consider that. So the UN through IFAD is definitely committed to ensuring that the poor smallholders in the most remote and disadvantaged areas are not left behind. And actually, as a matter of fact, the role and the mandate of IFAD are very much complementary to that of other UN agencies. And this is the collaboration among the UN agencies that is essential for the effective implementation of our cooperation framework. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you know, but IFAD represents half of the budget of our United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. So it means that IFAD is a very important component of the UN family here in Indonesia. And this collaboration is also important if we want to achieve the SDGs, and this time not only among UN agencies, but also with all partners, and to start with the government. But IFAD is of course working on the issue of agriculture. Agriculture means food. And the centrality of food in our life is not to be demonstrated anymore, we all know that. But then it means that food is equally central to development. But there is another element, and actually the war that is currently waged by Russia against Ukraine reminds us not only that peace is fragile, this we know, but now we just see it even more in a more crude manner. But also it shows that the system of interdependence that we have created through globalization has some limits and some weaknesses, and we must address these. Because as a matter of fact, Indonesia, a third of the wheat that Indonesia imports from abroad comes from Ukraine. Not having access to that will have an impact on many aspects of Indonesia's economy, and above all, on people's life. So that is why the role and mandate of IFAD can really takes its importance when it is considered within the globality of the intervention, and that no intervention, even on agriculture, can be considered outside of the intervention of other partners. So as a matter of fact, IFAD has furnished a total of $1.75 billion worth of ongoing projects in Indonesia, and therefore through that, of course, contributes heavily to the SDGs. And it has been working, as we saw in the presentation, for the last 15 years in Eastern Indonesia, which is really a region that needs a particular attention. And actually, with the Rome-based agencies, FAO and WFP, IFAD has also worked in contributing to the food system transformation, which is very much high on the agenda of the government. So these agencies are working really towards a sustainable and inclusive food system, and it is important. And of course, when we talk about food system, as you know, we talk about the primary production, but also the healthy consumption. And for that, the strategic program of IFAD is there as well. And actually, under the BAPENAS leadership, the UN has actively participated in the Food System Summit Dialogue in 2021. But let's not forget that the UN is only as strong as the support we get from our member states and partners. You know, the same way we say it takes a whole village to educate a child, but it takes a whole village to boost rural development and eliminate poverty. So it means that it takes the entire UN village, the entire international village to also address those issues. But I want to just finish to remind everybody that we need to remain faithful, all of us, member states and UN agencies, to our promise to leave no one behind. And in that sense, the work of IFAD can really make a difference. And actually, you were mentioning in your presentation that there is an impact on farmers, although we were lacking evidence. But the recommendation, for instance, on gender is equally important. And I think that if there is one topic that I would like, because all the rest you know very much, but one topic that I would like us to keep in mind as we discuss the evaluation's conclusion and also the next stage is that the focus on those who are left behind. And in the case of IFAD, for the rural communities, the communities that are in the remote areas of Indonesia, and women. And it should not be just lip service. It should really be that whatever we do goes and responds to the needs of those women. Because be it as it may, no matter how we look at this issue, women are always the most affected and left behind. Even in the most affected rural communities, women are the most affected. So therefore, we must do more than lip service. We must do more than tick an element on the document. We have to make sure that our interventions, including that of IFAD, really go to the benefit of women. So if this is only one message that you can keep from me today, is that one. So thank you again for this wonderful opportunity, and I look forward to the fruitful discussion. I have to apologize because I won't be able to stay for the discussion, but thank you very much for giving me the opportunity of the floor. Selamat sore and terima kasih banyak.
Selamat sore, terima kasih. Thank you, Ms. Julian, for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, before opening the floor for discussion, we move ahead with the next topic, which is key elements for effective project design, startup, and implementation of IFAD-supported projects. Director for International Cooperation, Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. Andre Chandra Dijaya, you may take over the screen.
Thank you, Reni, and also good afternoon to all the participants of this national workshop on country strategy and program evaluation. And thank you very much for the opportunities to share a little bit my views on the key element for ensuring effective project design, startup, and implementation. So since this is dealing with project cooperation, in this case is cooperation between Indonesia and IFAD. the effective design and implementation should, of course, start with common understanding between both parties, in this case, IFAD and Government of Indonesia, on some aspect dealing with the design, of course. One is what issues to be addressed by the project. So this is very, very important. And then the second is, of course, we have to be agreed on the target beneficiaries of the project. And target beneficiaries dealing with, of course, target of the geographic location. When I think some could mention that IFAD funded project was primarily directed to the eastern part of Indonesia. But in fact, the project should address most vulnerable geographic areas, which often identified with the eastern part of Indonesia, but it does not necessarily to be in the eastern part. And then the second is, of course, it should address a most vulnerable group, where IFAD always mentioned the poorest among the poor. So this is the thing that very important in the design of the project. And then the next aspect that it should agree is, of course, the expected output of the project. So what is the expected output from the design of the project? And then afterward, we should talk about the component of the intervention. And this part is very much important when we link to one of the findings of the evaluation committee, when mentioning that sometimes bad design will, lead to frequent need for redesign. Though if we see this is on the one part of the whole need for redesign, and of course there is some other part that lead to this redesign, particularly during the COVID situation. Always adjustment is needed because the implementation of the project is very much disrupted by the impact of COVID-19. And then my comment link to the finding also that the need for redesign, if we see recently we have, I think, around 4 or 5 ongoing project. Then the need for the redesign also very much. I don't know whether you could hear my voice. All right. Yeah. So yeah. So and so I lost my point. Never mind. So when we prepare the design of the project, the need for redesign is also very much contextual for each project. And the next part that leading to the effective design of the project is, of course, a joint commitment for the implementation of the project, which of course it will leads to the strong sense of ownership. So it will also lead to the strong leadership in the project, and it will also lead to the commitment to contribute most resources, both in terms of like in-kind resources as well as the human resource support. So if we are talking about how to ensure the good design and how to ensure the good implementation of the project, all those points is very much important. And then the joint commitment, of course, is the underlying part that will bring to the effective implementation of the project. And then the next part is, of course, the institutional setting for the implementation. Like, as you see under the structure of the implementation of the project, PMU, a project management unit, and then other human resource that working with this project is also very much important. And the sense of ownership will also, trigger the full participation of the unit for the implementing agency. When I yeah, I think that's all the thing that I would like to say, and then perhaps I could join on the next discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandra. We will continue with the third and also the last topic, which is on learnings and potentials for building partnerships in Indonesia. On this, we will now hear from the Asian Development Bank Country Director, Mr. Jiro Tominaga. Mr. Jiro, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Rani. I'm not Jiro, my apologies, but on behalf of my country director, who cannot attend this workshop, I'll deliver a couple of notes. First of all, I'd like to thank the evaluation departments of IFAD for this very, and to be frank, a very frank report. It really highlights some key issues in the sector and more broadly on how development partners can provide better services for countries like Indonesia, middle-income countries like Indonesia. Yeah. From our perspective, or from ADB's perspective, we recognize that we have a lot of value by partnering with IFAD, because we have different strengths and by putting together resources. When I'm talking about resources, it's not about money, but it's more about knowledge, expertise. It really helped to design solutions that are better suited to the needs of the country, and especially the needs of the farmer. We have learned a lot through our partnership, and we have ongoing operations together, but we are also developing new investments together, and this has been a very interesting journey. This is not unique to Indonesia. We are working a lot with IFAD in the Mekong, but for Indonesia, it has been a unique experience working together. And we see a lot of value to continue this partnership, bring different type of expertise, knowledge, and especially try to focus our support for the most vulnerable. We recognize that Indonesia is a very large country and with a lot of needs, and decentralization has been also a key factor that might contribute to complexity, but nevertheless, we need to work closely with our client, and especially with Ministry of Agriculture. I'm glad with what has been said by Chandra, but we also need to adapt ourselves to this complex environment, how we can streamline procurement, safeguards financial management procedures. Indonesia has made a lot of progress over the last couple of years, and the country system are getting better aligned with development partners system, especially for fiduciary. So there is room also for us to capitalize on those efforts that have been made by Government of Indonesia. Looking forward, indeed, we are looking at potential to deliver more integrated services, to also look at how we can better link farming system with the private sector. As I said, Indonesia is a large country, so we need also to attract the private sector in investing in farming system, in partnering with farmers, and especially farmers to get the products to the market directly without too much, how to say, cuts by middlemen, especially in a world of digitalization. And Indonesia is highly digitalized with a lot of platforms. Recently, we see in the agribusiness a lot of platforms that are linking farmers to consumers. So we should we should really capitalize and help farmers to take the opportunity to benefit from technology, to benefit from an increasing middle income population, which have more than which look for more elaborated food, for higher quality food. So also it means that should translate into more profits for the farmers. Yeah. So in terms of the partnership, we look forward to continue our great partnership with IFAD, and we highly appreciate the feedback from the evaluation team, and look forward to apply the recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tobinaga. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now field your comments and any contribution. Should you wish to take the floor, please go to the reaction box on the bottom of your screen and click on raise hand. Or you can also use the chat box if you want to put your comments or contributions. And when you take the floor, kindly turn off your microphone, state your name and also the organization you are representing. Okay, here we have received some comments here in the chat box. All of them are from Mr. Michael Ham. Thank you so much, Mr. Ham. This is acknowledged. And we will still waiting if any one of you would like to give any comments, contributions, or maybe your perspective about these 3 topics, which you can see the details in the chat box. You can find all the title of the topics in the chat box. All right, once again, we open for discussion. If you want to take the floor, you may go to the reaction box on the bottom of the screen, and you can click raise hand features. And after that, you are allowed to turn on your microphone, state your name and also the organization you are representing. Or you can use the chat box if you want to deliver your statement, your comments, or any contributions. Okay, I think we are all clear with the topics. Then we could jump into the next agenda. But before that, I would like to say thank you very much to all the amazing speakers for sharing their key insight and generating fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, jumping into the next agenda, we have Mr. Ivan Kosio here, IFAD Country Director for Indonesia. Mr. Kosio, I'm sure you are now inspired and are looking forward to taking on board the guidance, ideas, and also innovations that you heard during this event. So, Mr. Kosio, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, colleagues. I saw that Pa Arifin Rudianto, Deputy Minister of Bapenas, is attending the meeting. Pa Rudy, really nice to know you are with us. Didi Busili, Pachandra, other colleagues from Bapenas and Ministry of Agriculture, Valerie that had to leave, our resident coordinator, and several other colleagues from the World Food Program, the representative, our colleague and friend, Krista Rader is here, colleagues from FAO, UNICEF, ADB, IFAD colleagues from the Independent Office of Evaluation, of the Management, Indonesia team. I saw that we have also colleagues from Mars attending the meeting, and several other that I'm sorry, and I will not be able to mention all of you, but I am particularly pleased with the fact that we are all together here. I would like to, first of all, thank sincerely the Independent Office of Evaluation for the constructive dialogue that we had the opportunity to have along the evaluation process, for the in-depth analysis of strategic themes, for the high quality of the report. All that will fit the COSOP preparation that has to be submitted to the Executive Board this year, and will feed also the project designs and implementation. The main value of an independent evaluation is that this brings fresh eyes and different perspectives to the discussion, And I can reassure that from my perspective, you colleagues of IOE absolutely succeeded on that. Even though in some cases we don't fully agree, but it's not about agreeing, it's about thinking together, it's about provoking discussion, looking at the future, and I am sincerely grateful for all of that. I will refer my intervention to a very limited number of strategic topics. I will not touch all the very important strategic topics that are discussed in the report, just in sake of the limited time we have today. First, let's say package of topics. Along the report, there are three interlinked aspects that are extensively discussed. And they refer to the targeting, to the type of activities IFAD should support, and the geographic focus. Several of you already mentioned more than one of these topics, but allow me please to go back to them very, very briefly. In reality, the questions are about who we should work with, who we should target, doing what, meaning what kind of activities we should support primarily, and where, meaning the geographic focus. There is an extensive discussion in the report about a sort, I don't find the best words, and sorry for that, but a certain level of shifting the IFAD target priorities in the country, and in a very positive and very constructive way, alerts about the risk of reducing the poverty target we have in the country. This is along the document, and there are very important thoughts around that. I mean, it's evidence-based, and there is strategic thinking there. For many years, IFAD, not only in Indonesia, but worldwide, have focused on the rural poor population to develop mainly basic livelihoods and access to basic services. This is our identity, this was our identity. But we have learned, thanks to this experience in many countries, many developing countries, that working only with the poor population and only on basic livelihoods entails limits, restrictions that we need to surpass in some moment. It means that if, in my perception and experience, and I believe this is an IFAD learning, if this poor population don't establish productive financial and commercial connections with more dynamic actors, the fight against poverty will be quite limited in its impact. And the potential of working with others is even more evident in a very dynamic economy like the Indonesian one. This is consistent also with the corporacy petani approach, meaning entrepreneurial farmers, that is strongly embraced by the government of Indonesia. So maintaining the poverty focus, however, is not, doesn't oppose to promoting small farmers business. And this is a key element. And this is a sort of balance that we need to find now and in the future. Engaging into value chains, getting more and more involved in farmers' business, not only that is not incompatible with working with the poor, but also can create a virtual circle that can contribute to overcome poverty in a sustainable manner. So this means, however, at the same time, that when we work with the poor population, we need to engage with others under the value chain approach, accessing markets, or whatever. And that this entails that we are not going to work only with the poorest, we're not going to work only with farmers, and we need to be ready to engage with others, provided that we ensure that our primary beneficiaries are the poor small farmers. Otherwise, we are going to contribute or contributing to the isolation of small farmers or contribute to the business of non-poor farmers, and the beneficiaries wouldn't be, in any case, the small farmers for whom we work. There is a cross-cutting or two cross-cutting elements here that are gender equity, as mentioned before, and opportunities for youth. The reasons for that, I don't need to mention them in this to this public in this platform. Now, the choice shouldn't be between, we shouldn't be in the situation to choose between poverty reduction or business making, between family food security or access to markets. The way forward should be food security and inclusive business together to sustainably overcome poverty. However, it is clear to me that this nice formula sounds nice, right? It's not magic. And several tensions emerge when we tried to work on both fronts at the same time and make them fully compatible. This is my first point. With whom? So that the poverty focus should be there, should be kept. However, we have to understand that primary production is not all what small farmers can do and should do to overcome poverty. My second topic is about what type of activities we should support. And this is totally linked to the previous element. And of course, if we're talking about making business and not only primary production, primary agricultural production, we have to be aware that very often making business goes much beyond primary production, and that therefore new skills, new knowledge, new information, specific investments are needed, new actors, so that we can contribute to reduce post-harvest losses, storage, add value, transportation, and here comes also a food systems approach. So all these activities jointly with the primary and processing activities should be there. This is fundamental, and we shouldn't get scared when we are thinking about infrastructure outside the rural areas even, as a possibility of financing, because the small farmers that have a surplus don't sell the surplus in their own villages or communities. They sell it outside and usually face strong difficulties to have a minimum decent way of selling their produce. This means also that if we get engaged in this kind of activities, a portion of non-poor actors are going to benefit, and indeed benefit, from IFAD's resources. And it's important and it's totally fair to be explicit on this. Again, the main point, the fundamental point, is to keep in mind and to act in such a way that we guarantee that small, poor farmers are the primary beneficiaries of our work. It's interesting, a few weeks ago in a field visit with a project director and a project manager of one of IFAD supported projects, we, after an interesting discussion in a village with a number of people working in the project, we realized that one of the persons there was not beneficiary, a beneficiary, was not farmer, was not poor, and was not rural. His business is about buying coffee to small farmers, processing it, packaging it, bringing to the market, processing and selling it. I asked the project director and the project manager, do you believe that we should support these actors, these economic actors? And they had the different opinions. I personally believe that yes, and it's consistent with what I said before, that if we engage on a more dynamic value chains and business investments and actions, we have to be ready to understand and to accept that other actors will benefit also. The project director said yes, because his work is benefiting the small farmers. The project manager said no, because this is an agricultural development project. I bring this anecdote to the table because it shows that this is an ongoing discussion. Third key element, the geographic focus. It has two dimensions: where to work and how spread or how concentrated we should be. I will share with you as a starting point just one element. In a so big country and so populated country like Indonesia, today, IFAD works in 24 provinces out of 34 and in 140 districts out of 416, sorry. This is evidence. Is this too much or it's not too much? Each of us can have a different view. But from my perspective, it makes our work really, really complicated and demanding. And in many cases, impossible to cover. It's not my intention to blame the government for pushing for this or that coverage for this or that project, or the IFAD colleagues that have worked, or consultants that have worked in this project side. But this is evidence, and this is the reality. The evaluation in this regard calls our attention on the geographic dispersion and recommends that narrowing the scope will ensure that resources can be better targeted and have better impact. And continues saying that IFAD resources could or should be targeted, for example, in Eastern Indonesia, where rural poverty rates are the highest in the country. This topic is discussed along the evaluation report also. It's evident that we are too spread, what creates operational challenges, that this produces also dispersion of resources and jeopardizes the possibility to making real impact. But the truth is that even if we agree on that, the challenges come when we are designing each project and discussing with each directorate or director general of each ministry in order to agree on this big approach, on this approach. So this is something that we need to discuss during the course of preparation with the government, Ibu Sili, Pa Chandra. I see Pasami, I didn't cheer you, Pasami from the Ministry of Villages, sorry for that. But we need to discuss on this with all our colleagues in the different ministries. And also to discuss about the second part of the recommendation of the report. That says that we, for example, it doesn't say it should be like this, but for example, it could be in Eastern Indonesia. I am not sure that we should focus only in Eastern Indonesia. It's neither what the report says, but the report calls for a stronger, much stronger focus on Eastern Indonesia, what, given that we have limited resources, should imply to reduce the coverage in other areas of the country. So this is a fundamental aspect. This is essential, and we need to agree on that and continue discussing on that in the following steps towards cost of the new projects. Fourth theme, I have only 5. Fourth theme, IFAD comparative advantages. The report is very candid, it's very honest. And there are 2 things that I would like to take from it in this regard, regarding our IFAD comparative advantage. The report transmits an important message from the government, or from a number of high-level officers in the government, telling us, IFAD, that we should focus on what we know how to do the best, on what are our real comparative advantage, and avoid diverting our limited resources on what is not our specialty. And specifically, it mentions a topic that is a top priority for the government, but it seems that the government doesn't want us there, and is working on nutrition. And this is very interesting. The report, neither the government say that nutrition is not a priority, it's a top priority. But the government, through the report, say, IFAD, do that on what you are really good. Why do you try to do other things if you have more than enough on your plate? This is an important call to IFAD. And linked to that, the report also discusses how the design of projects receives increasing influence and somehow pressure pressure from corporate priorities and how these priorities not necessarily or not always respond to the government expectations. So there is a dialogue that is not, that is complex. I wouldn't say complicated, that is complex, but that needs and deserves attention from both IFAD and the government, so that we, IFAD, avoid being a too supply-oriented partner, and we try to find the common ground with the government in terms of priorities and our corporate advantages. The fifth and last element I would like to comment is on what I would call learning, 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 and learning. And after learning, sharing what we learn. And there is a very important discussion there. I personally believe that it is maybe the weakest, not one of the weakest, maybe the weakest aspect in our country program. That this, as the report says, and it was discussed today, limits our capacity to provide evidence on our impact, limits our capacity to share knowledge, and I would add, limits our capacity to scale up successful experiences and to influence policy making. So this is fundamental. This is essential. I could say that we don't have enough resources to do that, but it's true. Anyway, the point is there and is a high priority. And this is linked to the very weak M&E systems that, it was already said, I won't repeat it, are part of the same, from my perspective, part of the same big issue we should face. I didn't talk many strategic points, partnerships, policies, project design, implementation challenges, climate, etc., because I wanted to focus as much as possible. In summary, who our target population is and how we make compatible continue working with rural poor while also promoting rural business. Second, overcoming poverty is not sustainable if it remains limited to primary production and doesn't include a business dimension. Third, the geographic coverage needs further discussion and agreements with the government. Fourth, we have to rely on our existing comparative advantages. And fifth, we need to systematically learn and share the knowledge that we systematize through these activities. These are my takeaways and good, excellent points brought by the evaluation in order to feed our discussion towards the cost of preparation. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cosio, for sharing your valuable thoughts for the forthcoming country strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now an honor and pleasure for me to give the screen to Mr. Nigel Brett, IFAD Director of the Asia and Pacific Division, who will share with us how he and his team see the strategic positioning of IFAD in Indonesia, of course, to support rural transformation. Mr. Brett, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Director Ibu Dian, Director Ibu Siliwan, colleagues from IOE, ladies, gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm really happy to be part of this workshop on the CPSE for Indonesia. I'm always excited to be talking about Indonesia. It's a place I grew up when I was a child, and I've always had a very close connection to the country. So it's great to be here today. I really want to join with Donal and others in saying I very much appreciate the IOE independent analysis and assessment, which in this case looks at the last decade of the partnership. And the recommendations made, I feel they are very relevant, very important, particularly, and the timing is perfect, particularly if we think that we're going to be developing the new COSOP this year and with the IFAD 12 replenishment programming cycle in mind. So I really feel the timing is excellent. I'd like to thank everyone involved in the preparation of this document. I mean, I heard from one of the presenters that it's been a year of work, it's very, very robust, very detailed work. And I also, I can understand it wasn't easy with the difficult conditions with COVID, etc. So I really want to thank sincerely the staff and the consultants who were involved in this process. Indonesia is, of course, an extremely important member of IFAD and participates actively in our executive board and in the evaluation committee. And as mentioned by Donal, we have just celebrated our 40th year of partnership with the Government of Indonesia. So it's quite a significant moment to look to the future. Our program is one of our largest globally. I think there are 7 ongoing projects now with about 1.75 billion total cost. So it's really, what happens in Indonesia affects our performance globally, and certainly it affects our Asia Pacific program performance. So it's a very important program for us. And looking back over the last years, I feel that the partnership has been really excellent and has been continuously strengthened over time. I think in 2016, we established the sub-regional office in Jakarta to strengthen our delivery capacity and to provide better services in the country, but also within the sub-region, including the Pacific, PNG, etc. And Indonesia is increasingly present in the IFAD governing bodies, participating very actively in the EB, the GC, the evaluation committee. Of course, Indonesia was elected to be chair of the GC for the 2020 to 2022 period. Indonesia and IFAD have also been showcased recently and celebrated at the COP26, and there was a fantastic pavilion and highlighting the joint work on peatland management, which was really terrific to see that global attention on that work being undertaken in the Indonesia country program. I'd like to, of course, congratulate Indonesia's G20 presidency this year. We're really honored to be one of the government's partners of choice for contributing to the development, agriculture, inclusive finance, and the climate working groups. So thank you very much indeed for giving us that opportunity. We have also had some really interesting innovations and best practices which have been introduced in the program in Indonesia. And I heard one of the speakers mentioned the Mars partnership, but also the peatland management activities. And also, let's not forget the YES project, the Youth Entrepreneurship Project, was the first IFAD program to be dedicated to youth. So really interesting and innovative activities have been a feature of the Indonesia country program. IFAD has also actively contributed in the policy space, both in terms of supporting the development of Indonesia's Vision 2045, but also in the preparation of the new medium-term development plan 2020 to 2024. And we've also, Indonesia was one of the first cases where IFAD was a signatory to the new UNSDCF, and we have Indonesia was the first global case where we had a tripartite RBA country programming framework signed. So I think also Indonesia is a really good example of IFAD working well in partnership with UN agencies. I think the portfolio in Indonesia has evolved, of course, a lot in the last 10 years. And I noticed the comments from Michael in the chat referring back to the days of the support to the self-help groups. The evolution is really very well documented in the CPSE. In fact, possibly, as the CPSE mentions, over time, perhaps the country program has perhaps evolved too much, in the sense that, you know, we've become less focused and with a more scattered geographic targeting. So that's a key finding, and I think something which we need to reflect on. And as such, and looking forward, you know, the CSPE findings will help us work with government in elaborating the next COSOP, covering the 23 to 28 period. And we'll need to ensure that we are fully aligned with the government priorities, and also with the cooperation framework priorities. And to ensure that the COSOP is, as Ivan mentioned, you know, more focused, both geographically, but also in terms of the thematic coverage. And looking specifically to the future, and with the CPSE recommendations in mind, I can confirm that moving forward, the country team will undertake some key steps. So first of all, to initiate this year, under the lead of the government, that the consultation process, so the COSOP provincial and national consultation process, to determine the development agenda and the key priorities for IFAD over the coming period. We will be working in close collaboration with the government and stakeholders to ensure that we have a strong alignment between the COSOP and the long-term strategic vision of the government, and that we meet the government's evolving needs as a middle-income country, as suggested in the CPSE. And this will imply focusing more effort on Eastern Indonesia, with specific focus on the private sector and the value chains, generating decent and sustainable work for the poor and the vulnerable populations in Eastern Indonesia. And as suggested in the CSPE, we will strive to also look at how to design less complex projects, which are better adapted to the capacity on the ground, to the capacity of our implementing partners on the ground, and include capacity building elements, again, to try and improve the performance of those projects on the ground. And we also commit to put more emphasis on knowledge management through a countrywide strategy which really engages with partners and which really promotes policy engagement and is aligned with policy engagement priorities over time. We will continue to build on the ongoing RBA collaboration to ensure that we're able to leverage the strengths and the comparative advantages of each of the Rome-based agencies, particularly with respect to policy engagement. We will continue to strive to support the government on all the ongoing and future projects to develop, and I think Donal mentioned this point and a few others as well, to develop our M&E systems. So having practical M&E systems which are able to promote and support innovation, which are able to support better and more effective project management and generate the data, the evidence, which can then be used and leveraged to better impact on policy. And finally, we will explore with the relevant ministries and stakeholders on the possibility of how to improve the institutional setup related to project management. And this, there are many ways of doing this, but one option would be setting up, for example, a single project management unit for all projects under the same ministry. So we will explore with government that option and whether or not that would make sense in this case. So again, I just want to close by expressing my thanks to everyone, to the central and provincial governments, to all the stakeholders, the development partners who are here today. Great to have you with us today. And it's really fantastic to be working with all of you. I understand there's a new project which is going to be going to the board with the Asian Development Bank this year. So it's really, thank you very much for your partnership. Thank you also to the teams involved who made contributions to the CPSE, to the IFAD teams in Indonesia. We have a fantastic country team led by Ivan, and thanks to the IOE team and the consultants on the generation of the report, and what I felt were some really important recommendations that will really guide us moving forward with the new country strategy. So with that, big thanks to everybody, and really look forward to taking this forward in the new COSOP. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brett. Now we are coming to an end of this event, but before that, let's hear the closing remarks from the Director of the Independent Office of Evaluation of IFAD, Mr. Indra Naidu. Mr. Naidu, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Rani. And just to affirm, this has been one of the most exciting workshops I've attended. We've had close to 100 participants who engaged with a great amount of understanding and depth on this important evaluation, which is also very timely. And I believe that the candid and engaging discussions really helps us to translate these findings into for greater impact of IFAD program in the Indonesia. And I'm sure that Ivan and his team, working with Nigel and with the government, would be able to concretize this in terms of the next program. And we really think that this will provide a valuable input also for the finalization of the agreement at completion point, a short document that does summarize the main evaluation recommendations and follow-up actions agreed upon by the Government of Indonesia and IFAD management. Clearly, we've seen government participation has been high and very supportive in this program. It's also been a huge program from a point of view of the cost. Given the excellent collaboration that we've had, the Asia and Pacific Division and the Government of Indonesia, we also believe that they will be reflected in the new country strategic opportunities program between IFAD and the government. As we conclude today's national workshop on the country strategy and program evaluation of Indonesia, I would like to reiterate my gratitude to the Government of Indonesia, especially Bappenas and the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Agriculture. I also wish to thank the project implementation teams, development partners, and international consultants for participating in interviews, supporting the field visit, and for generally providing excellent inputs that have contributed to shaping the evaluation findings. It was pointed out, it has taken us a year to put this together, but of course it's a program that has gone on for an extremely long period of time as well. Finally, I warmly thank all of you who have participated and have so generously shared your views. We hope that today's workshop may spark further exchange and discussion among yourselves towards a country program that has a greater impact on eliminating poverty and improving the rural livelihoods of women, men, and young people in Indonesia. Also to recognize the comments that were made by Honorable Valerie Julian, the UN resident coordinator, which really struck a chord at all levels in terms of the role of IFAD, but also what needs to be done in terms of addressing the SDGs. With that, to our very good moderator, thank you very much, and I hand over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Naidu. Last but not least, I would like to cordially invite Ms. Siliwanti to join me on the screen to deliver her remarks and formally close this virtual event. Ms. Siliwanti, the time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, moderators. You are very good. Excellent. Dear colleagues, in the closing remarks, I would like to say that, I won't be long. I just would like to thank all of the participants who have joined this national workshop for your active participation and invaluable contribution. I sincerely hope that through the discussion that took place earlier, all of us can contribute to improve our cooperation for development in Indonesia. In this meeting, we have learned a lot from the IFAD and the Independent Office of Evaluation of IFAD, the ADB, Fellow Government College, from the Ministry of National Planning, Bappenas, Ministry of Agriculture, who provides actually input the discussion. Once again, on behalf of the Government of Indonesia, we thank you for delivering such important material so that all of us can deepen our knowledge. So from now and then, we together have to commit to improve the increased quality of the project preparation, including project design, procurement, and many things I think that we have to do before we, in terms of the preparation. More focus on narrowing on target and geographically areas covered by the projects, since it is a fact that we have limited for everything. For example, like the limited resources. Setting priorities is not an easy way, and you know that. So that's why we identify many things, many big issues, many problems, and of course, when we're setting, we have to set the priorities. And in terms of, we have to commit to the implementation, the quality of implementation, including procurement and many things. You know, we have a spirit to respond, to address root issues such as food security and poverty. And I would like to highlight effective coordination and communication, not just only central and local, but also, you know, that with the development partners, but also on the horizontal relationship among the institution. We have to take care of that. We have to do with that as a part of the institutional setting are needed, and place them as a prerequisite actually to support smooth implementation of the project based on equal partners. You mean there is a meaningful, the equal partners, national context, the participatory process should be taken. And you know that one thing is the impact measurement versus resources and financial inclusive access to finance. For example, for the young farmers should be considered as well. So therefore, we can address root issues of problem in agriculture sector projects. Finally, I would like to thank you all my colleagues from the IFAD Indonesia office, Pak Ivan. So I appreciate your support to the Government of Indonesia, to the local government, right, with the IFAD project. Of course, we have like the value added from the IFAD project. So now it is the matter on how we can increase the quality of the preparation and of course the implementation of the project. For it's not just only, you know, that facilitating, but also, you know, that this helping facilitating this national workshop and ensuring that it is proceeded smoothly. I would also like to apologize for any inconvenience that you might experience during this meeting. With that, I conclude this forum, and I wish you all good health and have a nice weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Siliwanti, for those inspiring words. Ladies and gentlemen, we have concluded our entire program for today. Hopefully you have been enjoyed this event. And last but not least, my name is Rani Raj as your moderator for today. And on behalf of the government, the Independent Office of Evaluation, and also the Asia and Pacific Division, we are delightful to have all of you here virtually. So I would like to say thank you very much for your presence and kind attention for today, and have a very great day. Stay safe and stay healthy. I'll see you on the next occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ibu Sili.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak Ivan. Have a nice weekend. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ibu. Thanks, Nigel, Indra,
Thank you, Pak Nigel.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Pak Sami.
Pak Semi, terima kasih banyak,
How many
Pak.
partners? Janet, Fabrizio, Citra.
Wow.